Okay, hello gamers. I'm coming at you with another video. This time it's going to be on life after build orders. I just want to kind of go through some of the decision-making processes of why I do certain things when I do them, when I'm building, um, when I'm in a kind of archer versus archer situation. And this game is just kind of a template, just kind of a way for me to kind of tell you guys why I do certain things. So let's get straight in there. Okay, so the first thing you have to kind of determine is like, what are we going to do really like early cast stage? Um, I think in this situation, I'm getting horse collar. Okay, let's just speed up a little bit so we get to like early cast stage. Um, I think honestly, some of the best approaches kind of for me is or that I think are the best is when you get cast stage, depending on like obviously what has happened during the game. I think the best thing to do is build a TC to defend some of your map, and then obviously get ballistics as well. So we're gonna see myself use that approach. But obviously when you are approaching cast stage in a kind of archer v archer situation, you need to take into account like the civ matchup, like what units they're going to be kind of making it, like whether or not the map is like easy to pressure. Like if they have a great map, maybe they can just 3TC boom and get an eco lead. So you have to take all that into account. And yeah, like I said, most of the time, if you have a nice kind of, you know, I guess this map isn't like, you know, it's quite close, and I've rolled it quite well, but it's still like you can do a lot of damage, right? You can idle all this with archers. You can basically idle every resource that I have with some crossbowmen. So obviously I need to take the map control this game, and I think really the best approaches will probably be ones that take map control in some regard. So yeah, I think honestly, if you are playing Archer v Archer, I think the things you need to be looking out for is this kind of like early cast stage timing, getting these CCs down, and getting the ballistics down straight away. I think honestly a lot of lower level players tend to like skip getting ballistics until much later, and I think you kind of need to get in the habit of getting ballistics and using your army as well as you can. You know, I think just getting ballistics just gives you like a confidence in the ability to do damage with the units, right? Because you just know you're gonna get hits off on the opponent's units. Okay, so we see here I'm going aggressively, but let's have a look at home. What's the follow-up? Like I said, TC and ballistics. So straight away I'm going for this kind of dual approach. I'm taking the map control, but I'm also making sure my economic follow-up behind isn't terrible. So honestly, I think, especially if you have a SIP bonus like Chinese, I think this approach is great. Obviously, you can still go for something like, less army, 3 town centers, and a defensive siege workshop. But I think that is a situational thing depending on the map. So if I had a really good map, if I had it really well secured, I could do that and get an advantage that way. But I think the way I'm playing here is a great template for most situations where you can kind of take the map control whilst also having a solid economy. So if we look, I'm getting ballistics, and the next thought here, after I get ballistics, is I want my 3rd town center. And you might say, well, you probably can't afford it, but yes, I can build a couple farms. I've already got wheelbarrow, and I should have some naturally floating food, so it won't be too much of a harm on my economy. I think if we see in a second, we'll see me. Yeah, there's the TC coming down, and yeah, this is kind of the general kind of guide for playing crossbows in cast stage. So what you want to do is you want to take the map control early with ballistics, build the economy behind, and then the next step is you build a siege workshop. And we'll see that whenever I have the floating wood, and obviously I need a couple more farms to keep these TCs going because I'm getting wheelbarrow right now. So we're just keeping the pressure on. Yeah, so when I get the farms, and when I feel like I can produce from these 3 town centers, the next step is the siege workshop. And I would say all of these steps, barring some like really kind of niche situations, they are not, you can't really skip them. Like especially in Archer versus Archer, like if you have the siege workshop and your opponent doesn't, like the amount of potential you can have to pressure TCs, just to snowball fights, get really good trades, is basically unparalleled. So what tends to happen, at least at the higher level, is when someone builds a siege workshop, the immediate response from the other person is their own siege workshop. Just because you can't really play in an Archer game without a siege workshop. So remember, just when you're playing the game, remember you're kind of taking into account these steps. Don't skip any of the steps unless you have a very good reason to do so and a very clear plan. So what are those steps again? Remember, TC, ballistics, early aggression, early map control with the ballistics. Then we build the economy into the 3rd town center, and then now look, we have the siege workshop. And if you follow this kind of template, basically what will happen is you can focus less on, well, what do I do? The build order's up. You have a very clear plan of what to do, and it's just about then kind of outskilling your opponent, getting better trades, doing economic damage, taking map control, taking map presence, at that point the game is more about you, and it's decided whether or not you can outplay your opponent rather than, you know, making some kind of crazy decision-making mistake that you kind of see quite a lot from low-level players. Just because it's very hard to have a clear idea of what exactly you need to be doing. Okay, so now we're kind of in a part of the game, like I'm saying, which is just about, you know, finding damage, like, you know, harassing. You know, obviously you can win the game at this point. I think I do actually win the game, or basically win the game from this point, but that's not important. I think the important thing is to just go through the decision-making processes. So yeah, after this point, like, what is kind of the long-term follow-up? I think that's something you need to keep in mind if you are playing like an archer civ. Like, what are you going to be doing in the next like 10 minutes of the game? So with Chinese, and this part of the game is completely dependent on your civ, by the way. So like I said, this you know, the first, you know, the TC, the ballistics, the third TC, the siege workshop, that's something you can do with every archer civ, and that most of the time will be fine. Obviously, there will be situations where maybe being all in where it's not. Most of the time that's fine, but this part of the game, you know, your follow up to imp is purely civ dependent. And now you need to figure out, you know, you think, look at your civ, and look at your other civ, and choose a strategy that's good based on that. So let's say we have, okay, let's use Chinese here, and also our follow up going to be, let's say that the opponent isn't Malians and they're a normal civ. Our follow up is probably going to be Oblast and Lightcav if we can get there. If we can get the build numbers up. So as I think we already saw, I got handcut already. I'm already thinking about the Lightcav switch, you know, getting the food eco rolling, getting the food down, the farms down. So yeah, we're probably looking at something like Arb, Lightcav, a really nice shot by Survivors there, and Chukonu, if possible, as a long-term follow-up. But if you're a civ like Ethiopians, for example, you don't really have the option of going Lightcav. Their Lightcav doesn't have +4, so again, we don't want to do that. Instead, you want to do something like probably like Arbs with Seedram and Skirm, depending on what you're going for, especially if you're against another archer civ. I think another important thing that I want to talk about as well is that if you have a civ like Vikings or Ethiopians, then you need to end the game with that follow-up. Again, the problem with kind of archer v archer as well is that depending on your civ, the follow-up is so different in imp. It can kind of range from like I said, this kind of, you know, standard Arbalest and Lightcav play into like a play where you need to win the game. So I think you need to think about your civ. Like, for example, let's think about Vikings, Ethiopians, and Britons. These are three really common and really popular archer civs. Your strategy for those needs to be completely different to like archer civs like Saracens or like Chinese, for example, or any archer civ, like maybe even Italians. That get like kind of hostile or Lightcav with +4 on bloodlines, so they have a really clear and really cost-efficient plan late game. But if you don't have that, for example, like Vikings, Ethiopians, Britons, then you need to figure out a way to end the game quickly. Because again, if that goes late game, you just will not be able to deal with the mobility of like Lightcav or hostile raiding your economy and, you know, killing your units. Like the unit comp of Lightcav and hostile is just better than you know, the reverse, right? Just Arbs on their own. You just have a really kind of a nice meat shield that you can spam and raid with. So when you're playing with those civs, your kind of approach has to be a little bit different. I would say if you're on those civs, what you need to be doing is very aggressive early imp, probably with a follow-up of like Seedram, Arbalest, and Scum, and those things you just kind of, you know, get a forward castle, get some forward rams, just be really aggressive and just win with the army snowball that you should have just by having those civs. Like with Vikings, you should have a great eco, so you should be able to afford the siege ram. With like Britons, you should have a great army because your army has good range, and you should also have a good economic follow-up. And with Ethiopians, you should just have a great army as well. So yeah, just remember that your decision making in imp is civ dependent, and just look out for that civ and build a plan from that. What I would generally say, if I could have like one really simple rule of thumb, like when you're going into imp, you want to be the army comp you want to be building is Arbs and Hussar if you have +4 and bloodlines. Or Arbs and Lightcav or Hussar if you have +4 on bloodlines. And if you don't have +4 defense, then you want to be kind of trying to end the game early imp with Siege Ram, with Elite Scum, and with Arbalest. That's all against Archers civs, by the way. Another important point is that I didn't mention actually is that another thing you need to do in the mid game is you need to get on stone to build defensive castles around that, and you need to be taking relics. But those are kind of just general like mid-game decision-making things that you need to just work into your game anyway. So I'm just going to speed up. Okay, so just to clarify everything, because I know I went through quite a lot there, and I don't want to keep this video too long. So early castle age, just remember you're following that kind of template. You're getting ballistics, you're getting your second TC, you're building your economy into your third TC, building it when you can afford it, and then the next step is the mangonel. And then from that point onwards, it's literally just, you know, you're winning the game for yourself or you're losing the game for yourself. It's all up to you at that point. And then remember you're on stone for the castle follow-up. And depending on your civ determines how you play the late game. If you have like Hussar or Light Cav with +4 on Bloodlines, then just switch into those against you know, a civ that's going predominantly ups, and that's fine. But if you don't have that option, then you need to be trying to win the game early with some kind of early siege ram and castle push and elite skirm. If anyone has any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments. And yeah, I hope that clarifies some decision making. If it doesn't, please let me know and I will do another video.